I remember back in 2004, I spent a month in Reno, Nevada. No, not doing that. I spent a month working for the Kerry campaign. And I remember having heard on the news where John Kerry said, referring to the invasion of Iraq, that is the first invasion of Iraq. Yeah, it's like world wars, we have to number them now. He said, I was for the war before I was against the war. And the Republicans just tore him apart. They called him a flip-flopper. And I remember watching part of the Republican convention, and they all had these huge placards. Huge things. On the big sticks, and they'd wave them around, and someone would say, John Kerry said this, but when he was 3 years old, he said that, and everyone would yell, flip-flop, flip-flop, flip-flop. And the Republicans have been rather consistent with the theme of flip-flopping. It wasn't just the Democrats. They sometimes take their own to task. When George Bush decided that we did in fact need a stimulus package because the economy was falling apart, so they made fun of him. I was against the economic stimulus before I was for it. They made fun of him. And then much more recently, they accused him of flip-flopping on, just about everything. And you can't blame the Republicans. I suspect the Democrats are just sad that they didn't latch onto this theme themselves. It has nothing to do with the political party. It's just how things are done. But notice that the idea of changing your mind is a bad thing in American politics, or at least can be painted that way. So flip-flopping is a pejorative term, and I actually had to stop and look it up in the dictionary. It means with contempt. And these people were speaking with contempt of Kerry and then Bush, and who knows who will be next. But if we take away the pejorative term and we think of it as changing their mind. Oh, Kerry voted for the war, and then later he saw what it led to, and he changed his mind. Or if we say, thought better of it. Well, George W. Bush believed that an economic stimulus was unneeded and would do us harm, but eventually the facts pointed to we absolutely needed this. So he thought better of it, and he came up with a different point of view, just like in Doris's song, a brand new point of view. Edward de Bono, a psychologist and writer, said, if you never change your mind, why have one? And I think that's exactly true, isn't it? If we're not willing to change our mind, what is our mind for? If our mind is not for figuring things out and re-examining things, what is our mind for? When I was a kid, growing up in the 40s and 50s, elementary school age, my father, of course, was a big influence on me. And he sort of set the political and social agenda for me. And I remember his saying, now, Danny, we all need to be really careful that we never have socialized medicine in this country, because socialized medicine is the first step toward communism. And he believed that, absolutely. And therefore, I believed it, absolutely. I no longer believe that. I wish we had something far more encompassing than Obamacare, but at least it's a start. You look around the world and we can see that the way we have decided to do medicine does not work. When Cuba has a better medical system than we do, we know something's wrong. We should be re-examining. We should be willing to flip-flop and change our minds. My father was a business owner. He was an architect, and he went into business for himself. And year by year, it would be very tenuous. He almost went out of business several times. And I remember his saying to me when the desegregation movement began to pick up a little steam, he said to me, no, if a man owns a business, and of course in those days it was always a man who owned the business, right? If a man owns a business, he should be able to decide who he serves. And that made great sense to me. It actually still makes sense to me, but the consequence of that can be very bad, can't it? The consequence of just letting anyone decide, oh, well, I'm not going to serve that group of people. I'm not going to serve Muslims, or I'm not going to serve white people, or I'm not going to serve whatever, the wrong religion. You know? I've changed my mind. I've done a complete 180. I've done a complete flip-flop about it. Now, there's no law that says we need to be willing to reconsider things and to change our minds. The engineer Edward Deming said, it's not necessary to change. Survival is not mandatory. And I think that hits the nail right on the head. As a species, if we are going to survive, we have to be willing to change. We have to be willing to look at things with new eyes and reconsider. If we don't, we're in trouble. Now, Gwendolyn at 12:30 will lead the Abundance Circle, in which she'll be giving us ways to help get our mind in a perspective to be willing to accept change. George Bernard Shaw said, progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. Now think about that. Think of all the changes you want to see in the world. And Shaw is telling you, if you are not willing to change your mind, you can't change anything. He's saying that the most vibrant social activist can't do anything if she or he is not willing to change their own mind. I love the way Tolstoy put it, because we all want so much to change. He said, everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. It's them that has to change. It's their ideas that are all screwed up, and I'll tell them what's right. Last week we had a slide that said, I'm not arguing, I'm just explaining to you why I'm right. That's the way so many times we approach the world. And Tolstoy is telling us it doesn't work. A little more recently, but still in my childhood, Norman Vincent Peale said, change your thoughts and you change your world. Wow. You know, I think of all the religious people who were on the news and the broadcasting as being quite conservative. I mean, that's my memory. But I look at this, and he was a guy who was everywhere. Change your thoughts and you change your world. It turns out it's not a new idea. It goes back at least 65 years. It meshes very well with our principles. Our second spiritual principle is our thoughts, attitudes, and expectations create our experience of life. Change your thoughts, your expectations, and you change your experience of life. Oh, change your thoughts and you change your life. Because what is your life except what you experience? And here's the thing. You need to be able to change your mind. You need to be able to re-examine every single belief that you have, even the unconscious ones, most particularly the unconscious ones. You need to be able to do that. You need to be willing to do that, and only you can decide to change your mind. You know that someone else can't argue you into changing your mind. You have to first be willing to change your mind. And my challenge to you today is, are you willing to change your mind? And I'm going to suggest to you later that you do an exercise of finding a place to change your mind. Are you willing to do that? Steve Maraboli, the author and speaker, said, with one kind gesture you can change a life. One person at a time you can change the world. One day at a time we can change everything. With one small gesture, you can change a life. And when I read that, it reminded me of Susie. And she has said to me a number of times, and she said it here, that she has taken on the practice of smiling at people. Just that. And you can see it makes her beam just to think about it, because she gets such a wonderful response from people just by smiling at them. So I don't know if her smile changes their life, but I know it changes her life for the better. Absolutely. It's a small gesture. What if you were willing to take on smiling at strangers on the street? Oh, he looks dangerous. No, smile. What if you were willing to do that? What would happen? And just to sort of wrap up the circle of thought here, it was Gandhi who said, be the change you want to see in the world. So you have to be willing to change. You have to be that change. And it begins with changing your mind. And my challenge to you, which will be on the spiritual practice cards, that Gwendolyn will hand out after a bit, my challenge to you is that you actually practice changing your mind. That today, this afternoon, you think of something, find something that's maybe been in the back of your mind like, I'm not quite certain about this, and rethink it. And if you decide to keep that your opinion is still the same, fine. Choose something else. And work at it, and listen to other points of view, and see if you can change your mind. And keep at this all week, if it takes all week. Look for a place to change your mind. Now, I'm not talking about, your political affiliation or whether you're going to marry this person necessarily. It can be a little thing that you change your mind about. It can be that rule you have in your life about you can't put a hat on the table, or you have to do this, or you have to do that. Just something. Practice changing your mind. Go ahead. Change your mind and change the world. May you always, always be willing to change your mind. Namaste. All right, thank you. And now the musicians are standing up because they know it's their turn again.